Yes, sir.
Senator, you just said that there's a lot of good work to be done, so what is your plans after January 5th?
Well, you know, I've still got a couple weeks, active weeks in the Senate, so I'm looking forward to representing us there and working. It reminds me, my final day as governor, I had 5 public appearances. And I'm finishing in the Senate pretty much the same way, working right up until Christmas Eve in all likelihood. So I think I'm probably going to do a collection of things, probably some things in the private sector helping to create jobs. I'd love to work with kids in an educational institution at some point because education has just always been a part of my family's value structure. And so I'll probably do a variety of things like that. But I'm just intent on making sure that whatever I do, I get home frequently, and because this is the place that we love.
Any chance residents of Indiana will get to vote for you again in any office?
By the way, we're keeping our home in Indianapolis. So, and my wife asked me, when you'd be interested in this. I think it's fair to say we are probably the only family in Washington, D.C. that flies the state flag of Indiana over our front door. At least I've not seen another one. And so it's been there for 12 years, and Susan told me the other day, she said, you know, it's looking a little tattered because it's been out there through 12 winters and 12 summers and all the wind and all that kind of stuff. Do you think you can get another state flag?
I got one in the truck.
Well, you know, I do. Well, she said now we got one of those flagpoles that comes off the front of the house, so it's got to be one with the sleeve on it, not the one you kind of go up the pole. So I said, dear, I'll see what I can do. So maybe when I can work with you, because we want to keep flying that state flag, so that people know there's a little bit of Indiana there in Washington, D.C. So I haven't made any final decisions, but it's probably going to be a collection of things in the private sector, and still some things to help people.
Any possibility you'll run for any office in the future?
Well, I don't know. I wouldn't rule it out. I don't have any plans right now. Our new senator coming in was in the Senate and then was out for 12 years and is now coming back, so that kind of thing can't happen. But I just don't know, to be quite honest. There were really 3 times when partisanship was put aside and ideological purity was put aside and people thought more like Americans than Democrats or Republicans. And I mentioned that in particular. There were 2 other times I mentioned as well. But yes, that needs to happen. These debts and deficits that we're saddling our children with are wrong. It's bad economically, and I think it's immoral to saddle future generations with our own unpaid bills. There's an opportunity to deal with that next year, and I don't, if you want to get into the weeds on this, we can, but there's something called the debt ceiling we'll be run up against. Basically, Congress and the President have to do something to allow the country to borrow more money. Nobody's going to want to vote for that. The Republicans aren't going to want to vote for it because they ran against, increasing the debt and deficit. The Democrats aren't going to want to vote for it because they don't want to get attacked for raising the debt. And so, and yet the country, if nothing's done, the country will default, which, that may sound like, oh, okay, but basically what that would cause would be our currency to collapse, interest rates to skyrocket. That would be hugely damaging to the economy, threaten millions of jobs, thousands of businesses. It would be like the United States of America going bankrupt. And obviously a great nation can't do that. So that is going to be the moment at which we'll have an opportunity to deal with the debt and deficit, because the country will require action. No one's going to want to take the action that's necessary, and yet ultimately it's what's in the best interest of the public. So Democrats and Republicans are going to have to come together, and rather than playing political games, figure out a way to get the deficit on a path toward a better place while not allowing the country to go bankrupt. So Win and Phil, you guys are legislative veterans, so my observation is that legislative bodies usually deal with hard things when there's a deadline that can't be avoided. Is that a fair statement? Since we're all part of legislative bodies, and so it's that debt ceiling that will provide the deadline that can't be avoided that will impel people to act. And also the knowledge, a lot like this tax thing. Why did people behave more sanely on this tax package? Because no one wanted to get blamed for taxes going up on every American. And that was going to happen if nothing got done. So they came together and said, okay, since something has to get done, let's work together and make sure it's a good thing. Same thing on this debt ceiling vote. You can't allow the country to go bankrupt. That would have calamitous consequences. So people will probably sit down and try and work through that. And I would look at what they're doing in England right now, where they have a coalition government. The Liberal Democrats and the Conservatives are governing together, and they've got an even bigger budget problem than we do. And they've agreed on an approach that's 2/3 spending cuts and 1/3 revenue. And so my guess is you'll probably get some combination of spending reductions, entitlement reform, and my guess is tax reform to get rates down, but to broaden the base, to grow the economy, which will have the consequence of generating more revenue. So look to in the spring sometime that happening. So that's a long and roundabout way of answering your question. I think ultimately we will get more bipartisanship to address the debt and deficit because there will be events that will require us to do that. Did that answer your question?
Yes.
That was almost senatorial there. It was a mini filibuster. You know, things, regrets that I have or things that I could do over, you know, I'm not a big one for regrets and that kind of thing, but I will say this. I do regret that the information that we were given before we voted on the war in Iraq turned out to just be wrong. We were told that Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction, chemical, biological, and possibly a nuclear program. And when we got in there, it turned out that that just was not so. So it was not an unreasonable belief at the time, but it turned out to just not be the case. And I think that's unfortunate.
In your campaign war chest to help that effort?
Oh, I'm going to be active helping others. I was this last time. I gave about $1.5 million to the state party and was pleased to do that. And I intend to continue to help other people. I'm going to be active in public life, even if I'm not on the ballot. And so it's just part of my DNA. And I think our first order of business needs to be electing and re-electing good mayors, like Tom Henry. There's a woman named Melina Kennedy who's probably going to be running in Indianapolis. I think that's a real opportunity. One of the nice things about that position is, and any position, particularly mayors that come from media markets, if you can have a good, competent mayor from your party who's on television on a regular basis, well, folks out there watching the news go, wow, this fellow seems to be doing a good job. That means Democrats must be competent. They care about the same things I do. And that tends to help the whole party. And we don't, one of our problems is we tend to get characterized, or caricatured the way the national party is. We need to have our own identity here in Indiana. And for being pragmatic, for economic growth, fiscal responsibility, traditional values, those kind of things. And if we carve out our identity, that identity for ourselves, there's no reason we can't win a whole lot of elections.